Deputy Brenton Howlin, who has 30 seconds.
I ask the Taoiseach Minister for Foreign Affairs the status of negotiations with the United Kingdom relating to the preservation of the benefits of the common travel area in terms of residency, right to work, access to public services and the right to vote. If necessary preparations will be in place by the March deadline, if Irish citizens in the UK need to take any action prior to that.
Thank you, Deputy. The Common Travel Area is a long-standing arrangement between Ireland and the UK, as deputies know, which means Irish citizens can move freely to live, work and study in the UK on the same basis as UK citizens and vice versa. Both the Irish and British governments have committed to the maintenance of the CTA and the associated rights and entitlements of Irish and British citizens under this long-standing reciprocal arrangement in all circumstances. I updated the government on the CTA at its meeting on the 15th of January last. Considerable progress has been achieved bilaterally in discussions with the UK over the past year involving several departments in what has been a whole-of-government exercise. Ireland's shared aim with the UK throughout has been to ensure that the necessary arrangements are made in both countries so that the CTA can continue to function effectively after the UK leaves the EU. The bilateral work undertaken reaffirms the existing CTA arrangements between Ireland and the UK and recognises the shared commitment of both to protect the associated reciprocal rights and privileges as a legitimate and fundamental public policy. It reaffirms the status that Irish and British citizens enjoy in each other's state, including the associated reciprocal rights and privileges, covering free movement, the right to reside, the right to work without special permission, as well as to access healthcare, social security, education at all levels, and the right to vote in local and national parliamentary elections on the same basis as citizens of the other jurisdiction. Neither Irish citizens in the UK nor British citizens in Ireland are required to take any action to protect their status and rights associated with the Common Travel Area. After the UK leaves the EU, both Irish citizens in the UK and British citizens in Ireland will continue to enjoy these rights. Both the Irish and British governments have committed to undertaking all the work necessary, including through legislative provision, to ensure that the Common Travel Area rights and privileges are protected. Bilateral arrangements as appropriate to each area of the CTA will be concluded in due course and at the appropriate time. Some of that means legislation, both primary or secondary, but most of it is policy coordination.
1 minute. The understanding I had, and I'm grateful for the very close level of briefings we've had from the Taoiseach, was that a high-level memorandum of understanding between Ireland and the UK existed and was just awaiting the appropriate time to sign. Can I ask him, when will that signature happen? And secondly, because this really is of fundamental importance to the 800,000 Irish citizens in the United Kingdom and for the many tens of thousands of UK citizens in Ireland, when will we actually get a chance to see it to ensure that what has been set out is actually going to be achieved? I think we need to scrutinise that. I think it's a reasonable request that we would have sight of it. So when will it be signed and when will we see it?
Tanis, just 1 minute.
Yeah, well, there's essentially this has already been agreed at official level, Deputy. No. I hear the question. There are some formal signings that are required, particularly around social security. That is due to happen in the coming days. I outlined reasons earlier why that wasn't signed earlier, but I think we are now at a point. Yes, before Christmas. Yeah, I think we are now coming to a point where not signing them means that we simply don't have time to be able to do all of the follow-up in terms of legislation in order to be ready for the 29th of March, should that be necessary, to protect our citizens in terms of their pension income, and social welfare income and so on. So we hope to be able to do that in the coming days. In terms of the overall MOU, I don't have an exact date for it, Deputy, but as soon as we finalise that, we'll make sure that we share it with opposition parties.
Deputy Howlin.
The Common Travel has existed, as you know, since the 1920s. It actually has never been codified in law, so the specific entitlements have never been set out, therefore could never be tested. And it's a cause of concern that we're going to have to do that for the first time now. It's a reassurance that it'll be a support for people, but it might have implications. For example, you've seen Dagmar Schrick, Professor of EU Law in Queen's University's Belfast comments, in asking fundamental questions about the spouses of Irish nationals and their rights and so on. These are things we need to set out, because it's not an agreement anymore. This will be, if you like, a formal document that can be tested in the courts. So for that reason, I think it really is, I have two fundamental questions. We need to see it, to test it, to make sure that it does what you're saying, that is, reaffirms all existing rights and entitlements. And secondly, will it be a document that can expand into the future, so that in the future there will be additional rights that might accrue to Irish citizens in the way that the Common Travel Area in the past broadened over the decades?
I mean, that's a very reasonable set of questions. I mean, the reason why there was a choice to be made here as to whether we would put in place a formal legal treaty around the CTA on a bilateral basis between Britain and Ireland, or whether we would do it through this Memorandum of Understanding mechanism that would have some legislative elements to it. The reason why, my understanding anyway, is the reason why we've chosen the MOU mechanism is to have the flexibility to deal with the kind of issues that you are potentially raising. I'm not suggesting that it's in relation to spouses, but because the CTA was in some ways quite a loose arrangement, they didn't have one piece of legislation that addressed it in total. It was across multiple pieces of legislation in different government departments. It built up as an understanding between the two countries over decades. It kind of did, yeah. At least a recognition of each other's citizenship in our countries. But because we then joined the European Union and the Single Market and Customs Union, a lot of that formality was never needed because it was taken over by EU membership. The absence of EU membership now for the UK obviously exposes some of that, which is why the MOU is needed. And there's been lots of discussion on the detail of that, and obviously with the EU as well, to make sure that they're okay with that. And as I said, you know, when we're ready to publish that, we'll you know, we'll share it with you straight away. But I don't.
Final question on priorities.
It's not in a condition to publish it just yet.